to conduct this meeting wholly electronically and to effectuate both emergency procedures authorized by the Freedom of Information Act, otherwise known as FOIA, the ARB needs to make certain findings and determinations of record. It's a bit cumbersome, so I ask you in advance for your patience. First, because each member of this ARB is participating in this meeting from a separate location, we must verify that a quorum of members is participating and that each member's voice is clear, audible, and that an appropriate volume for all other members. Accordingly, I'm going to conduct a roll call and ask each ARB member participating in this meeting to state your name and location from which you're participating. I ask that each of you pay close attention to ensure that you can hear your colleagues. Following this roll call, we'll vote to establish that every member can hear every other member. And we start, as always, with Ms. Michelle Albright. Michelle, you are muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, I hope I can unmute myself now. Thank you.
Can you introduce yourself, Michelle, and where you're coming from?
I am. Oh, I see down here. Okay. And I meant to say, I am in my residence in Alexandria, Virginia. Sorry about that.
That's all right, Michelle. All right, at this moment, I do not see John Burns. Ms. Camplin. Do not see her as well. All right, I'm Christopher Daniel, ARB Chairman. I am reporting in from my house in Reston. Ms. Swan?
My name is Samantha Huang. I am joining the meeting from Reston, my home. I can hear my colleague well.
Thank you, Samantha. Mr. Kalinsky.
All right, it's Steve Kalinsky. I'm joining the meeting from my office in Alexandria, Virginia, and I can see and hear everybody so far.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Murray.
Elise Murray, I'm participating from my home in Vienna, Virginia.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Notkins is not here. Ms. Orr.
Hey, Orr, and I'm at my home in Alexandria, Virginia.
Thank you, Kay. Mr. Plumpy.
Sure, it's Joe Plumpy. I'm from my residence in Fairfax Station, Virginia. See and hear everybody clearly. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Zellman.
Jason Zellman, I'm at my home in Burke, Virginia, and I can hear everyone just fine.
All right, at this point, I don't see that anyone else has joined us since we went around through all the names. So at this point, I'll pass the virtual gavel over to my vice chairman, Mr. Zellman, so that I might be heard to make the requisite motion. I move that each ARB member's voice is adequately heard by each other member of this ARB.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Second for Ms. Orr. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries.
All right. As determined by the roll call, 8 members of this ARB are present and therefore satisfy the quorum minimum. The ARB bylaws state that a minimum of 6 members are required to determine a quorum. It is so moved.
Is there?
I'll second again.
Second for Ms. Orr. Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries.
Third, having established that each member's voice may be heard by every other member, we must establish the nature of the emergency that compels us to use these emergency procedures, the fact that we are meeting electronically, what type of electronic communication is being used, and how we've arranged for public access to the meeting. I therefore move that the state of emergency caused by the COVID-19 pandemic makes it unsafe for this ARB to physically assemble and unsafe for the public to physically attend any such meeting. That as such, FOIA's usual procedures, which require physical assembly of the ARB and physical presence of the public, cannot be implemented safely or practically. I therefore move that this ARB may conduct its meeting electronically through Webex, a county virtual meeting platform, and available for access through the ARB county website or through phone at 1-844-621-3956 with the access code 2336-353-0927. It is so moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second, thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries.
And Denise, I have just noticed that John is trapped in the attendee section.
Yes, we are trying to get him out.
Yeah, it's not presenting the option to make him a panelist. So John, if you can hear us, I suggest you leave the meeting and come right back.
Yeah, I was trying to actually get him into the meeting, and we got him into the meeting, but now he's not a presenter, he's an attendee.
Always fun. All right, well, we'll continue upward and onward. So we're still at 8, maybe 9. It is next required that all matters addressed on today's agenda are statutorily required or necessary to continue operations and the discharge of this board's lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities. It is so moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Kalinsky. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries.
All right. Last but not least, the ARB needs to determine how long each member of the public will be able to speak during public comment periods. The public will be allowed to comment after consent agenda items and after each action item as a standard ARB practice. I move that each member of the public will have 3 minutes to speak.
All right.
Second it.
Second by Mr. Plumpy. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed? Any abstentions? And the motion carries. And the gavel back to the chairman.
All right. Thank you very much, Jason. We will eventually be joined by Mr. Burns, I believe. I'm sure we'll surmount the technological difficulties, but we shall continue on. Now that we've gone through that, we've talked about the public comment time limitations. I will note to any members of the public that might be here for an action item. After the presentation for any action item, I will call for public comments. If you wish to identify yourself for public comments, please raise your hand or indicate it in the chat feature so that staff may recognize that. Next, Denise, I know you're busy with John, but do you or Grace want to talk about the virtual meeting WebEx information?
Sure. Sorry. Yes. So this meeting is being recorded, and the recording will be posted online within 10 days. Attendees may email me during the meeting or use the chat function in the WebEx platform for inquiries, and we'll monitor the chat and respond accordingly. If you're calling in and you wish to make public comment, please indicate so by raising your hand, pressing *3 at that appropriate time. That raises your hand and we'll know to unmute you. Attendees experiencing technical issues, please call WebEx technical assistance at 1-866-799-3293. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Denise. Next, after we get through all the red tape, to begin any of our ARB meetings, we start with a reading of the Statement of Purpose and Intent of Historic Overlay Districts. Mr. Kalinsky, I saw your hand go up, so it seems like you're offering to read it. By all
Yeah,
means.
if you're looking for a volunteer, certainly.
The floor
All
is yours.
Statement of Purpose and Intent of Historic Overlay Districts. Historic overlay districts are created for the purpose of promoting the general welfare, education, economic prosperity, and recreational pleasure of the public through the perpetuation of those general areas or individual structures and premises that have been officially designated by the Board of Supervisors as having historical, cultural, architectural, or archaeological significance. Regulations within such districts are intended to protect against destruction of or encroachment upon such areas, structures, and premises, to encourage uses which will lead to their continuance, conservation, and improvement in a manner appropriate to the preservation of the cultural, social, economic, political, architectural, or archaeological heritage of the county, to prevent creation of environmental influences adverse to such purposes, and to ensure that new structures and uses within such districts will be in keeping with the character to be preserved and enhanced.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kalinsky. All right, moving onward, I will, after we move to the next item, I will highlight that for all presenters, we are asking that presentations be limited to 8 minutes for a first submission and 3 minutes for a resubmission. This applies universally to both action items and workshop sessions. For the clarification, that is time placed on the presentation itself. It is not a time limit placed on the ARB membership for asking their questions. So I would ask that you please try to restrict yourself to those time limits as best as possible. Denise and I will be trying to monitor that to let you know when you're getting close, so we can let you know when to try to wrap things up, just to help keep things moving along, since meetings obviously do tend to run long with this board. Next on our agenda is the approval of the agenda. I would look for a motion from a member, either to accept the draft agenda as submitted by Denise or to modify it as appropriate.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Zelman.
I move the draft agenda presented be adopted.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Orr. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion passes. We have an approved agenda. I'll stop for just a moment to recognize Mr. Burns has joined us. John, can you hear me? And let's see if we can hear you.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. All right. So let the meeting record show.
Apologize. It was quite a battle to get on.
That's quite all right. Let the record show Mr. Burns has joined us. That brings us to a quorum of 9 instead of 8. With the agenda approved, we move into introduction and recognition of guests. Denise, are there any introductions or recognitions of guests that we need to identify?
There are no guests tonight, Chris.
All right. Moving onward, obviously, again, I'll reiterate, I recognize we have folks in the attendee section who are participating, as Denise advised, raising your hand or commenting in the chat, or using, I believe it's *3 to indicate if you wish to comment on an item for comment. All right, moving on to consent calendar action items. We have none, so we go straight on to items for action. We have 4 items on the docket. First is ARB 22PHC01 Pohick Church sign located at 9301 Richmond Highway in Lorton in the Pohick Church Historic Overlay District. The applicant is proposing to install a new freestanding church monument sign with base. Marissa Aon represents the application. And
Good evening. Nice. Thank you guys for meeting me again. And I just get started, right?
yes, if you have a presentation, Denise can pull it up, or you can pull it up. I won't. I'm not going to start your clock without your presentation up. If I
share button is not activated on my side.
Grace, can you make her? Okay, thank you.
Oh, thank you. Perfect.
And the only thing I reiterate, Ms. Aon, is that obviously you came in for a workshop session, so we've seen the presentation. We have the materials that you provided to us via the package. So we've seen these all. So focusing on what you've done in response to any of our comments and stuff like that is what we're trying to do for efficiency's sake, for everyone's time.
Absolutely. And if there was any members of the public, it'll be really short. So this is located at Pohick Episcopal Church, and it's an amazing historical facility. And it's because it's part of the historical district, that's what brings us here today. There is design criteria that we used, and keeping in the theme and the flavor. Since our last workshop meeting, we did slightly adjust the location. We took note from the other members about the changing throughout the different seasons. So we were able to see with just the foliage being in a different state, and we did move the sign a little bit for better visibility and also to accommodate more landscaping, which was one of the comments from one of the members. So same thing. This is what the sign looks like. We did update the colors kind of in a mock-up rendition so you can see how realistic it looks. Obviously, it's not a repeated pattern like it is digitally. It'll be painted, customized to make it look very natural and realistic to match the existing. And next. So the church did have a landscape person on part of their membership, and they went ahead and gave us a layout of kind of what they proposed using all native foliage and pretty. And we did update the electrical spotlight, which is going to be a warm, yellow type light. Those are some of the comments that came up from our workshop. We are limited on the height of the sign, so that means we are limited on the foliage that can go in front of the sign, but they plan to build up more on the sides for height too, so it kind of fits in the natural environment there. And actually, I think that was all the major comments that, I did have, I was asked to bring a sample so you can see what it looks like. Can you guys see me okay on the screen?
Yes, we can. I think you're actually the first time a person has had a sample physically in hand.
I know I don't know how helpful it is being digital, but you can see my heavy brick. Here I am lifting it, but I'll try to get kind of close. But you can see how the paint makes it. Even the grout is speckled to mimic what the church has over the years, and I don't know, it's very robust. And I'm just gonna do a hammer or something to show you how strong it is, but that is all I think I have.
All right. With that, we move on to if there were any comments from members of the public. Obviously, Denise, I would ask you to check to see if you got any feedback in from any raised hands or comments in the chat.
I see no comments, Chris.
All right. And so I'm changing things up a lot here with the ARB in this upcoming meeting, but the one way to try to help our membership, because we've been going around alphabetically in the past, I've been asking if members will raise their hands using the raise your hand feature, and I will identify you for comment if you have any comments. Obviously, I'm looking at all the folks on the screen to see if you have your hand raised as well, physically raised. Oh, John, I see your physical hand up, so I'm going to call on you because for some reason it's not showing me your hand up.
Okay, I have two questions. One is, how does one raise your hand in Webex? And then the second question is, when the applicant held up the sample material, it was one-sided. The back side was gray. And I was wondering, this, I assume, will be a two-sided sign, that the rear face, even though without letters, will have the brick appearance.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Here is the backside.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and John, I can answer your second question. So you should have a tab called participants, and in it should have a list of all the people participating. There should be a little adorable looking digital hand right there that you should be able to click and declick to raise your hand.
Adorable.
Right at the bottom of the participant tab.
Oh.
There you go. I see it now.
Okay. Did I turn it off? Okay,
You
good.
did.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
I have no further comments. Good job.
Mr. Plumpy, I see your hand up as well.
Sure thing, I'll make it brief. My comment is just about with the landscaping itself, as being the landscape architect on the board. I question some of the planting choices. We go back to that. I think you have deer out here, and they will munch on everything you put out there, except for the hellebores and boxwoods. So I would caution that because it's out in the open. The hellebores likes to be in shade, partial shade to almost dense shade. They will not survive out there in full sun. Hardy plant, drought resistant, but it needs shade to partial shade. That's in full sun. So that I feel the only plant that you have successfully shown on there is the English boxwood. So I would have your landscape person on the church board review that so that they're more deer resistant. Nothing's deer proof, but also get something that can handle the environment that we placed. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Plumpy. Mr. Kalinsky, I thought I saw your hand up as well.
Yeah, barring any other comments, I'd like to make a motion for approval.
All right, well, I'll just ask if there are any other members that have any comments Just giving one last chance. I was going to just agree with Mr. Plumpy, actually. I feel very well informed, even though I'm not a landscape architect, because I just did some work in my yard. Some of those seem like they would be a little bit in trouble. I appreciate that you have the landscape plan, though, so that kind of adds a little bit of, and brought the material sample, because that was something I had some concerns about, was this material just doesn't, I don't know why one wouldn't just do brick. It just seems, to go artificial just seems so much, but it looks close. It looks close to the real deal, but not close enough that I feel like it's a historic Pohig church sign. So I don't have any comments either, and I'm not seeing any other hands or any physical hands being raised by any other members. So, Mr. Kalinsky, I would entertain a motion.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the ARB approve action item ARB 22-PHC-01 Pohig Church sign located at 9301 Richmond Highway, Lorton, in the Pohig Church HOD, tax map number 1081-010027, for the proposed freestanding church monument sign with base as submitted and presented at the May 12, 2022 ARB hearing. Upon review of the materials and the presentation, the proposal is found to meet the requirements of zoning ordinance 3101 historic overlay districts.
Is there a second for that motion?
I second it.
All right, seconded by Mr. Plumpy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. All right, Ms. Ayan, Denise will be with you in the coming days to work with you about getting the approval, the actual stamp. Otherwise, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right, our next three items are all associated with the same parcel. They are ARB 22 LFK 01, 02, and 03, all associated with 1102 Chainbridge Road. The first one for a demolition of existing structure and dwelling and site amenities on the parcel. The next one is for a proposed site plan for that, and grading plan for that parcel, excuse me. And then the last one is for the construction of a new single family dwelling on that parcel. They're all going to be presented by Mr. Jabori. Obviously, Mr. Jabori, I know we're going to have to work through each of these. They each require their own ARB approval. So what I would suggest is, I know you were here for a workshop last time. Let's cover the demolition and grading, and then let's kind of focus on the new construction second, if that makes sense.
Sure enough. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, and you can see the screen,
Yes.
the file up, or my face only? You see
Yeah,
the screen?
I can see the screen, and we can see your face behind the backdrop, and for the camera too. We get both.
Okay, fair enough. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Kevin Jabori here, civil engineer for the project, presenting the case for Tafty Enterprises. Based on the workshop that we had for 1102 Chainbridge Road, there were basically three main comments. We are back here seeking approval for the demolition. And that's the first item on the docket for this project. That piece being this sheet of the plan in the set that was forwarded for your review earlier. This is the existing condition, highlighting the items that will be are proposed to be removed from the site, and the tree save area in the back, and unless there are any questions, I really don't have anything to add.
All right, well, if we're just focusing on the demolition one, I will look to the ARB members if there are any comments or questions on the proposed demolition plan. Because remember, each one of these requires a separate approval by the ARB. I'm looking at cameras and not seeing any hands up or comments. I didn't recall us having a lot on the demolition one when you were here last time. Mr. Burns, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm curious, I see the tree save area at the top of the site on your drawing. Are any of the trees or other foliage on the historic district side of the lot, i.e. that would be the right side of the lot, being saved, or is it all going to be removed?
To be honest, Mr. Burns, the quick answer to your question, short answer is the majority of those trees along the side that you're asking question about will be removed due to disturbance. However, the quality of those trees are not very high. They are not necessarily in a very good shape, but I recall, I believe it was Mr. Kolinsky, but maybe I'm not correct 100% on that. The gentleman expressed concerns and asking for some kind of a screening the subject property from the rest of the historic overlay district, and I can show you something here, but I was waiting to get to that portion. This is a conceptual landscaping plan for the property. As you notice, we're showing some trees here if we can save any. As I mentioned during the workshop, we made a site meeting and met with the Fairfax County Urban Forestry Branch or members of it, and they had some concerns regarding the trees, and we have agreed that to the extent possible, any trees that could be saved and they are considered healthy enough will be saved. But majority of which are going to be, I'm going to be, frank with you, majority of which are going to be in the back where the disturbance limit will not occur.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Sure.
All right, are there any other questions from ARB members on the demolition proposal? All right, Denise, I'll ask if there are any members of the public that have any comments on the demolition proposal.
I see no hands raised.
All right. Seeing none, I would entertain a motion from an ARB member.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Zellman.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that the ARB approve action item ARB 22-LFK-01 1102 Chain Bridge Road, demolition of existing dwelling and site amenities located at 1102 Chain Bridge Road, McLean, in the Langley Fork Historic Overlay District, tax map number 0223010057, for the removal of the existing dwelling and associated site amenities, is submitted and presented at the May 12, 2022 ARB meeting. Upon review of the materials, the proposal is found to meet the requirements of zoning ordinance 3101 historic overlay districts.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second.
All right, multiple seconds by Mr. Kolinsky and Mr. Burns. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right. All those opposed? Any abstentions? All right, the motion carries. All right, Mr. Jabori, one of three. Next, any updates to the grading plan update based?
Before I follow through with the next segment of this presentation, I would like to thank you, everyone on the board, for approval of the demolition plan. It's quite appreciated. This is on the same project. This is the proposed grading plan showing the footprint of the proposed house, which essentially sits on the left side of the screen, exactly where the current house sits. And we are saving the front driveway and the entrances as they are today. We will retop the driveway, but essentially we're not changing the grades in the driveway, and then we feed the garages on the side of the house through that driveway, which is very similar to what is currently there. A pool will be constructed in the backyard. This is the infiltration trench proposed to address stormwater management requirements, and of course in the very back, the tree save area and so forth. Any questions?
All right, thank you, Mr. Drabori. Before we do that, I'll just, since each one's an individual action item, I'll ask if there are any members of the public that have any comments on this one. If they hadn't on that one, if they did on this one, I would hope they'd indicate by now if raising their hand or any other method. Denise, seeing anyone?
I do not.
I do miss not being able to just stare at the public and just see if they have a hand raised. I'll just throw that caveat in there. So I would then turn to the members, if there are any members that have any comments on this portion. Note that we still will talk about new construction, so I know that's where most of our comments came in before. I'm not seeing anyone raising their hands. I would ask, so you showed that landscape plan, Mr. Javori, and I know that's probably going to be talked more about in new construction. And you talked about the conditioning that you were talking about when you met with Fairfax County. So how is that? I guess my one question is, with the site plan and the demolition, how are those conditions being represented to the contractor that's going to do any of this demolition work and then site the grading work for the grading plan? Because that's my biggest worry. Is I appreciate the idea of keeping any healthy trees, but I want to recognize the practicality that when folks are out in the field, they don't remember any of the conversations that all of us fun folks have in our virtual meeting space. Is that going to be evident on the plan materials? Is that something that, and obviously I would emphasize that to ARB members, is that something we want to condition in here, that emphasizing that in our approval, that is practical, any healthy trees are saved when it is possible. I know that, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was apologizing for the fact that my question was so complicated, it might be hard to understand where the question was. But I was curious what type of conditioning could be put in that grading plan to help make that apparent when work is happening.
Of course, in the back of the property where the limits of disturbance are identified, the county requires us to put signs up, tree save area, do not disturb. When it comes to the disturbance of land in the rest of the area, if the trees are identified as having a fair chance of being saved and surviving the land disturbance, tree protection may be put around their drip line or thereabouts. But with all honesty, as you notice, the side yards are so tight that although my client has a tendency to use small equipment with a small footprint, like a bobcat and all of that, we've consulted two different individuals on this. One is an arborist for the property, for the project, and also a landscape architect that we met with actually this past Monday, 3 days ago, on site. And we are also exploring the possibility of relocating some of the trees that are on the property, and they could be moved to the area that there's going to be less disturbance. But to be honest, all I can promise you is that we are going to do our best to save as much as possible. The Urban Forest Management Division has not concerns. They're adamant that they want to save certain trees, but like I mentioned to you, in our workshop meeting, we have along the back of the property and along the upper part, there is a sanitary sewer force main that is located presently about 6 or 7 feet in the ground. And these existing trees that I showed you pictures of last time, they are all in that easement. Now, I don't want to get into too much detail and bore you with stuff. That easement is depicted but never been recorded. So that's something we need to clear up with the county, how that's going to evolve. But whatever is healthy enough, we believe we can save to the best of our ability. And on the side that it abuts the overlay district, historic overlay district, we will be planting additional trees to provide the screening that was requested.
All right, thank you, Mr. Jabouri. I would urge, since the chairman doesn't make motions, that if we consider motions in the future, we may want to emphasize our importance on this fact of our approval. Mr. Plumpy, I see your hand up, so I think you may have a comment or may wish to make a motion.
No, I just have just a couple comments here. Ideally, the ultimate prize would be to save trees in the front yard itself, if possible. I know that's where you're doing some grading, and but you said the driveway was all going to remain intact. So I think you did have a tree survey done. I believe you did with tree types. Is that correct?
Correct. It just happens to be Mr. Plumpy that the same arborist who worked on the project with the previous application, it's the same individual that I use with my projects. So the short answer is yes.
Okay. Again, I trust your arborist will do its best, but you know, right now, I mean, let's face it, there's not going to be anything saved except for those trees in the back. I guess no further comment. Mike, I think you're doing everything you possibly can. It appears. Thank you.
Sure, thanks.
All right, Mr. Burns.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I don't care for this particular project, but in the future, if there's another agency of the county that has a report or an impact on a project that we're considering, we might ask that a copy of that report be entered into the record for the individual property. It doesn't matter if it's the urban forestry, or we often get them for archaeological reports. But I think that's not a bad idea to include that as a standard protocol.
Absolutely, that makes good sense. Be a good thing to catch in the future in particular. All right, I am looking. I don't see any hands up or any other comments. So thank you, Mr. Jabouri, for answering those questions. With that in mind, I would entertain a motion from a board member if they had one. And I'll remind you all that the draft motions came out with Denise's email today. Mr. Burns, I see your hand up, but I note you're muted.
I have no expertise whatsoever in grading plans. However, I will make an attempt here. Mr. Chairman, I move that the ARB recommend approval of action item ARB 22 LFK-02 1102 Chainbridge Road grading plan located at 1102 Chainbridge Road, McLean, in the Langley Fork Historic Overlay District. Tax map number 0223-010057 for the grading plan as submitted and presented at the May 12, 2022 ARB meeting. Upon review of the material, oh, wait a minute, you had I will ask the chair if he will give a friendly amendment of his suggestion after I finish here. Upon review of the materials, the proposal is found to meet the requirements of zoning ordinance 3101, historic overlay districts.
Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Kalinsky. And as indicated by Mr. Burns, I do wish to offer a friendly amendment that the conditions that the applicant, as indicated during the meeting, undertake such efforts to, if possible, preserve healthy trees identified in the area discussed upon the, oh, I do not remember the direction. Trying to pull that up on my screen.
The top of the page is basically south and the bottom of the page is north, more or less.
All right, so we're talking about the north side of the property. If I'm orienting myself correctly on that, as described.
Mr. Chairman, I accept the friendly amendment.
Mr. Chairman, I'll accept it under my second.
All right, any discussion? Hearing none, I'll look for a vote on the motion as amended. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, motion carries. All right, Mr. Jabori, 2 of 3, and on to the one that I think will get the most discussion, the new construction.
Thank you, everyone on the board again for your kindness in approving our grading plan. This is the meat of this presentation, especially with the comments that were made last. Mr. Kolinsky expressed concerns with the coloring of the shingles on the rooftop. We changed the coloring to slate to make it a bit lighter. Still a stucco facade. Front elevation viewing, right elevation with the garage doors, which is on the right side of the house, of course, right elevation, of course. Rear elevation of the house and the left elevation. And this is a close-up color sample for the roof shingles as requested. And then there is a full permit set, architectural plans with all the details and structural calculations and the products and all of that. Any questions? Would you like any close-ups? Unfortunately, I do not have any samples like the previous applicant to show you on my camera.
That's all right. That was a new standard set. All right. So before we get into any of those, obviously, if there are any members of the public that have any comments on this item, raise your hand now.
I see no members of the public. Raise
All
your
right.
hand.
That's all right. Always got to ask. And then we've got, as you said, we've got the plans and materials we've submitted, and I would look to see if there are any members that have any comments on those materials. Looking to see if there are any hands raised. Mr. Kolinsky.
Yes, thank you. Just as a matter of course, what I don't see on the presentation here is something that was kind of buried in the grading plan submission, where there's 4 renderings, 3-dimensional renderings of the finished house. I think that'd be helpful for everybody on the board to see those. And it goes beyond just the two-dimensional colored one. So, sir, I think that'd be great.
If you bear with me a second, I am looking. Are you?
Yeah, those are sheets 35, 36, 37, 38 pages in your presentation.
These is Mr. Kolinsky, are these the renderings you're talking about?
No, there's actually 3-dimensional renderings with landscaping drawn in and cars and.
Okay, okay.
Let's see that.
Bear with me, please. Yes, I have them. I came across them today and I said, well, I don't know if this would be applicable. The problem we may have, although okay.
Okay, so these are not items that were in the submittals, but something you have that you could show today if you want to.
Well, Mr. Daniel, they were in the submittal, but they were under the grading plan file.
Oh, okay. All right. I see. Now I'm understanding what you're saying, Mr. Kalinsky.
Is this, excuse me for a second. I am viewing the file myself. I'm trying to figure out how I can change my, let's see. Grace,
So you know what? I guess I saw these and thought I was already looking at the new construction one.
Grace, may I kindly ask you to direct me how to change my share view, because
Yes, you might have to stop sharing and then start sharing on the correct item.
Well, my thing is, and this reduced, show active, show grid.
We can see it on your screen, but
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, so
see
I
it
think
right
it's
now on
okay.
your screen.
You
what you're
can see
showing.
it right now?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
see the front elevation.
Okay.
So and if you're able to cycle through the other photos, there we
Do
go.
you see this now? The garage side?
Yes.
Okay.
And there
This
should
is
be
the rear.
should be two
This is the
more.
backyard with the pool.
Yeah.
Now, as I mentioned, I do not have these re-rendered with this slate roof, but we agreed that that's what we're gonna do.
Okay.
Would
And
you like?
I appreciate the color change on the roof. It makes it more consistent with the neighbors, and I think it will help blend the architecture with the neighbors. I think what you have, Mr. Jabori, is I'm gonna say elegant and not overly fussy, and I think that works well in the context. And you won't be standing out as much as the existing house does now with regards to its neighbors and how it respects the historic district. So I'm content with what you have presented. I think these renderings just, give it a nicer appearance and let you see, particularly that front elevation. You want to click back on that. The only question I have for you is these renderings differ slightly from your two-dimensional elevations. Your two-dimensional elevations have a series of 3 windows on each of the 2 projecting bays, as opposed to the larger panel of 4 windows.
I can assure you the other views that we had shown you are going to be the house and not these.
Okay.
As far as the windows.
I tend to prefer this, though I still think the other one is appropriate just the same.
What we were showing with this.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yes.
You like the other windows, but do you think this view that you were looking at right now is more appropriate?
No, I think I think they're both appropriate. I just prefer the other view that you had up.
You like, well, in the back they are, is this what you prefer?
Well, yes.
And this type of windows.
I'm more concerned with how the house presents itself to the street.
May I kindly ask Mr. Tafty, if you hear me, do you agree with Mr. Kolinsky to have this type of windows? Can you respond to us?
Good afternoon, everyone. And Mr. Ponsky, I have, I'm not on the screen to see, but whichever that you would prefer as a better look for the neighborhood, we will definitely go with that pick. I will definitely do that.
Okay, thank you.
So, Mr. Kalinsky, just to be sure, these 3D renderings, window styles and panels is what you rather see.
Yes, that's what I prefer to see. You know, my colleagues on the board may have a different opinion, but I certainly prefer this over the two-dimensional drawings that were presented.
Respectfully, Mr. Kalinsky, whatever the board says, we will do.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, Mr. Kalinsky, any other comments?
That's it for right now. Thank you.
Okay.
I think, could I just jump in?
Yeah. Okay, I was looking to see if there were any other folks that had comments.
Right. The gable at the right, all the way to the right, I don't know, in the elevation, looks wider than the one that's presented in the 3D. The proportions, yeah, that's a wider element, the one on the right, than what is shown, I think, in the 3D rendering. Because if you pull those and see, don't you feel that way, Steve?
Yeah, no, I recognize the difference there, Kay. You're correct.
Yeah, because I love that. I like the width to window ratio in the 3D versus this is going to be a little, I don't know, it's a little chubbier or something. I don't know what happened, but
we all know that renderings can be distorted and
yeah. Well, anyway,
show
that's
a different
more,
picture than the true reality, but
yeah.
May I interrupt here, Ms. Orr, a second? I believe the perception that you visually are noticing is the fact that in the 2D rendering, they are showing a straight upfront view of the house, and this is an angled view. If we were to the view that you're looking at the 3D right now, if we were to rotate it so you face the house exactly, it's the same. Nothing has changed. It's just the way they did the rendering in this one is totally like parallel to or perpendicular or whatever. It is not an angled view, and this is like they're standing in the driveway looking sideways to the house, while on this one they're just looking at the house up front. I think that is the difference. I don't think architecturally there is any difference in what is shown in either one. It's the same look, but two different angles of taking the picture.
Hey, any other comments, Ms. Orr? Sorry.
No, I disagree, but okay, whatever.
Okay, and if you don't mind the discourse, despite the width of the garage, I still think like the pair of windows,
Yes.
the single opening with paired windows inside will settle nicely on that elevation, along with the other large openings that are infilled with window panels.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's true.
So I have a few comments as well, not seeing that no other hands up. So to kind of distill what I think I'm understanding from Mr. Kalinsky and Ms. Orr is we're really talking about the windows being either combined or separated, as well as the elimination of those lintel that was above the set in the package that came with us. Because in the front elevation, you have a very pronounced lintel above every single one of those individual windows in the not the 3D drawings, but in the actual 2Ds. And so the plan in the background that you're and honestly, to be frank on it, I actually agree with Mr. Kalinsky on this. I like the 2D version too, where the windows are all collectively together, regardless of whether or not it's the rendering showing a large is accurately representing what those 3 windows would look like or not. I like the idea of them being together without that kind of faux colonial lintel that you have in this. It looks more modern and more, it differentiates itself in this design, but still feels appropriate, as Mr. Kalinsky said, because this is not a historic building, and this makes it even less of a historic building as opposed to the design that was put in with the front elevations. Kind of feels a little too closer to that. I'd rather have what's going on here, and I think I want to emphasize that for the membership, that if that's a condition that we want to apply, that change, because the rest of the windows on the other elevations reflect that style. So it would also be a level
Still up there.
conformity.
There's still a segment that's proud. I can see it. You can
But
see
it's not I think the breaking apart case was the thing. It draws attention to it, is what.
Yeah.
So because of that change, it's one consistent piece.
Yes.
I feel like that is, I agree with my 2 colleagues that I think that adds a little bit more subtlety to it in my mind. Also, it's consistent with the other sides, and I kind of am all about that too. But that's my comment I have on it. But I will highlight that if that change is happening, we want to make sure we make that clear in a condition on a motion, because with the materials that were given to us, that's not what's reflected in Mr. Jabori's materials, but he seems to have agreed to doing that. But we want to make sure we make that clear so that he has direction going back, and Denise and staff have direction going back. And from what I understood from you and the client, Mr. Jabori, they were okay with that from the company. Okay. I am looking, Mr. Burns, you might have a comment as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with Mr. Kalinsky. I find that this is a house design that has bold massing. It's kind of classical in its massing, but I think that the bold massing calls for a bold statement in the windows, and having 3 little windows in each of those locales doesn't reflect the boldness of the overall massing of the property. I think Mr. Kalinsky's recommendation is spot on, and I fully support it.
All right, thank you, Mr. Burns. I guess my only other question is that I think, again, we want to emphasize the landscaping point in this. And so you said that this conceptual landscape plan would be attached to this. I think that's I'm happy to see that there is going to be planting work done there to try to help continue to maintain what we're likely going to lose here. But that would be my only other comment. Mr. Plumpy, I see your hand up as well.
Yeah, I was going to ask, will we see a final landscape plan that will actually be installed versus a conceptual rendering? I would like to request that happens if we approve this tonight for the architectural. As well as the tree survey is submitted with that, and the tree save plan that they would like to do during, or actually before their demolition, after they staked out the tree clearing limits. So again, preservation plan for existing trees, and the existing tree survey of all the trees and the location on the plan, and finally the landscape installation plan that will be installed as opposed to a rendering.
May I ask a question, Mr. Plumpy?
Yes, sir.
When you say a tree survey, to the standards required by the PFM or all trees on the site? Because there is a difference. I mean, we have that 8 inches and larger, or 12 inches and larger in Fairfax. What are you? I mean, we have crepe myrtles there that they may not qualify, but we're trying to save them anyways.
To your discretion. Honest to God, like I know in the backyard is a gorgeous dogwood. I know in the front yard there's, I can't tell what they are because it's the photographs don't do justice. But I think we're all getting at this is such a gorgeous house and everything. We don't want to hide it, but we also want to have some maturity of landscaping versus little puny landscaping that's installed, especially in the front of the house, to accentuate the architectural lines as opposed to denuding the site and putting in small caliber trees, and it'll take forever, 3 days for it to grow up to its thing, unless your proposed landscape plan shows sizable trees that you're planting. Right now we have no clue what you're planting there, except for a rendering that looks like there's some circles on it. Personally,
we're gonna adhere to what the board requests, no doubt.
okay, sounds
So
good.
I just want to emphasize that the quality of the home that this client builds, actually, to be very honest, on the other project that the board approved in the same area a few years back, my client has planted so many trees that the county
That's
is
fine.
having a hard time.
Sir, I totally understand. I'm not trying to be difficult here, but I think the bottom line is, as times have changed, things cost maybe more, so therefore things will get smaller and so forth. But just please submit a proposed landscape plan for approval, and
Okay.
and any tree saves on that plan. I'm not trying to be difficult. I think you've done it for the architecture. Let's do it for the landscape, please.
Sure, thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Plumpy. Mr. Burns, your hand's still up. Did you have further comments?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I do. In the 3D rear rendering, on the right side of that rendering, there was a fence. I presume it's a security fence for the pool. And I just wondered how extensive that fence line is around the pool. Does it go all the way across the tree save area in the back, or does it also go across the what in this view would be the right side, the driveway side of the property?
Is this the rendering, Mr. Burns, you're
Yes.
referring to?
Yes.
The property currently on all sides, except for the front, has fencing. And it is not of a high quality. And we intend to install in the same location, which is on the common property line, a fencing similar to what is being shown here.
Okay.
In all sides.
Okay, and then can you please include that in the landscape plan that Mr. Plumpy requested be submitted? And then one last question, and that is site lighting. These 3D renderings don't show any lighting attached to the building itself, and I just wondered what site lighting. I assume you might want to use the pool after dark, so I assume that there will be some site lighting on the site.
I suspect so. I am very doubtful that there will be any lights installed, maybe like a porch light of sorts. Did you want to see those renderings as such?
Again, I'm concerned about light spill onto adjacent lots, and so you know the county has requirements on
Correct.
that sort of stuff that I'm sure that you're aware of. But I was just curious if there's site lighting. You know, can you please put the location of that site lighting on that landscape plan that Mr. Plumpy requested?
Okay.
Thank you, sir. That's all.
Sure.
All right. Mr. Plumpy, your hand's still up. Did you have any follow-up comments, or is that a legacy hand? Okay. All right. So gotten a lot of feedback, some statements on certain conditions, depending upon approval. I would entertain a motion if there are no other member comments, if one feels deigned to craft one.
Mr. Daniel, I'd be happy to craft a motion, but I'm a little perplexed on how to handle the landscape plan, tree save plan, tree survey issue.
Well, my suggestion, that was something, a question I was going to consider asking to Denise, that, you know, obviously Mr. Burns brought up the issue of lighting, as well as Mr. Plumpy brought up the concern of a landscape plan. So obviously our approval could be conditioned upon the submission of those items to the ARB as well, as detailed by Mr. Plumpy and Mr. Burns' comments. But I would look to them to give you guidance on how to say that when drafting a motion.
And this is something they need to submit for us to review again, or is this something that the county's going to review.
Well, that was a question I wanted to ask Denise, because normally when we see these building projects, we frequently do see a landscape plan submitted alongside them, and that I'm not assuming that a site would be built with just bare earth. There will be landscaping done. That'll occur, and that was a question I was having when I was going back through this regarding lighting, and particularly regarding any specifications on that lighting and that information, and trying to identify some of that information as well. So, Jabori, I don't know if you have any additional information on that. I know there was some on the some information on electrical, but not a great deal of information on exterior lighting related to the structure itself.
I am embarrassed to say that I do not currently have any specific information on lighting per se. But the only thing, and I'm totally cognizant of the fact that this is a different application and what was previously approved matters not perhaps, but I did, to the extent possible, due diligence to see what was done previously. I don't believe the same requests were made last time when the previous owner came through. A landscape plan indeed was provided, and it was incorporated into the final grading plan, but the county Forest Management Division had significant comments on that landscape plan themselves. So we can adhere to your request, but there is no guarantee that the Urban Forest Management Division will not have their own thoughts.
Well, and the caveat I'll put on, I appreciate acknowledging that just because we approved it before doesn't mean the same thing happens again, because we do, the board changes and our thoughts change on things. But I will, for the other members, since anything that meets the requirements in the HOD that requires a building permit, that could trigger, that would trigger our review. So obviously not everything that could happen in a property necessarily triggers a review for the ARB. So certain activities, if they are, you know, we may approve certain aspects of a project. If they're not included and they occur separately, then, you know, there are plenty of people that install lights without building permits on their houses that we don't ever see, obviously. So I think that's a question. If the ARB wants to condition that Mr. Javori come back to us with those materials for our comments, then we could add that as a condition of our approval of these construction drawings. Or we could ask that if you want to come back with all those materials, we could do that and have that final discussion then. I think there's a lot of latitude here, but you know, I don't want to dictate a specific path given some, but I will try to answer your question there a little bit, Mr. Kalinsky.
I'm just, as much as I want to not impede Mr. Jabori and his client, I'm
we could call it a conditional approval potentially too, with the returning landscape plan.
So if it's a conditional approval, then they have to come back to get that approved. I mean, isn't that the same thing as a deferral?
That would be the kind of the idea, is that we would be expecting that portion of the plan to come back to us. So.
Chris and Steve, do you mind if I make a comment?
Yes, sir, Mr.
Yeah, I was going to say that, you know, perhaps we can give approval to do the clearing and grading, no problem, and then also the approval of the structure itself, so he can order his material and all that, no problem, and then just come back at a future date when he's ready to install the landscape to, or not ready to, but you know, with appropriate time before ordering plants and everything, is to submit that plan and the lighting plan too as well, because the structure is not going to change. Like the landscape is not going to say, okay, move this window here and there. It's really is about landscape and lighting. That seems to be two things on the table that we just want more information on to approve, as opposed to no information. Is that possible?
Again, so, and Denise, obviously you can chime in and give me some more observation on this, but the real hook is the fact that we are here approving a project for a building permit that requires a building permit, which is the demolition, the grading plan, and the new construction all require those, which gives us our chance. And so when many projects come through, they include landscaping in their plan sets, because most times when you build a building, there's landscaping. And so we usually have that chance, particularly for Mr. Plumpy to opine, particularly on the landscaping at that point. And obviously as the ARB, we have a lot of interest in landscaping in general, because it does help with new construction, giving screening and other factors. So one opportunity is to approve it, but require that landscaping plan come back to us for review. That is a condition we can place upon our approval.
But can he get his permit then to build it without that? Which I would like to see him get his building permit without question. I don't want the landscape plan to hold up him to build the house. I just want to make sure it's right, or not right, but acceptable.
May I interject here?
Hold on just a second, Mr. Jabouri. Denise, were you going to chime in there?
I was. I will. The building permit submission triggers my review for conformance, and what the ARB has approved is what I compare to what is submitted. If there is no landscape plan approved, then I don't have anything to compare it to with the building permit, and the landscape plan isn't subject to that review. So it either needs to be deferred so that it comes in as one package, or there's a condition that says that the building permit, that the landscape plan must come back to the ARB for review before that building permit can be pulled.
I got it.
Just the process.
All right. So sorry there, Mr. Jabouri, but now that we've gotten that clarification from staff, since you're the applicant here, I want to hear your thoughts on how that,
Well, the fact of the matter is, if I am here on front of the board requesting approval of the building plans for final construction. However, going through the process with the county, if the landscaping is in a limbo, we can get approval on our grading plan to pull permit to break ground. I can assure the members that we will provide the board with any documentation, any backup information that they're requesting to their satisfaction. But in a way, it sounds to me like we're getting delayed on being able to submit our plan, because it won't get approved unless we put something in, and then after we submit to the ARB, you say, well, yeah, I like this, no, I don't like this, then we've got to put a revision in that, which we can build our building with the permit, and then we put a revision in for landscaping perhaps.
Well, I have a question for Denise. However, Denise, can he pull a demolition and grading plan right now after this approval? Because he already has that approved already tonight, the grading and clearing plan. He can pull that right now, but he cannot pull his building permits to build the building. So that'll keep him busy at least for a month. And I'm assuming that you would come back in a month to submit the landscape plan to get it all approved with your building permit for the building, as opposed to the grading and clearing. Is that true?
That's correct. Yes, that's a true observation of the process as up to now.
So
yeah, Mr. Jabouri, at this point, we've approved your grading plan and your demo plan. Those have been if you are submitted and Denise reviews them, they are approved by the ARB. It's just the new construction where the actual physical building permit would be needed, that is currently up for discussion and vote.
The landscaping is a requirement of a grading plan. It is not part of the building plan.
Well, it sounds like we already approved the grading plan.
Exactly.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask you, please, if possible, we could get your permission to apply for permits. It's going to take a few months, and I guarantee you I will bring the landscaping plan in next meeting and to your satisfaction as you request. And we really build good quality home with fine landscaping, and I will guarantee that will satisfy you. But since it was not requested, my apology, we were not ready for that. But lighting, usually they don't ask, but we do really quite a bit of a nice lighting. You can, gentlemen can visit the house at 1011 Turkey Run Road, which we recently finished. You will see how nice we do the landscaping and lighting work. But I surely will bring you that plan if I will get your permission to not wait for long. We already have challenge with materials and everything else, and I really appreciate your help. God bless you all.
I again I cannot make the motion for this. What I would obviously suggest one consideration is that it be conditioned that it be submitted to us. It doesn't require a review necessarily, but we do if we seem to want that submission. I see several other hands from other members, I think, that popped up. Jason, your hand came up.
Yeah, I had a question, and maybe this is me being too lawyerly based on something Denise said, but Denise, you had said that we could approve it conditionally, which I understand, and then it could come back to us for review if we put a condition on it for a landscape architecture plan. My question is, when that comes back to us for review in that scenario, is that something that's more informational and we're making suggestions when we condition that, or is that something that then we would be required to approve that landscape plan?
Right, and Mr. Jabori just shed light on something that I was not aware of, that the landscape plan was part of the grading approval rather than part of the landscape approval. The conceptual landscape plan came in today, and Mr. Jabori contacted me and let me know that it was in, and I told him that it was too late to submit it for your review tonight, but he could include it in his presentation and let you all know that it was here. He had received it today. So, at this point, if the landscape plan is supposed to be part of the grading plan, and you all have approved the grading plan without the landscape plan, then I don't see any way of incorporating it into the building permit process as an approval.
Though I will highlight that the applicant has offered to at least provide it to us, which I think is very appreciative.
We shall.
But I think we may have bureaucratically sank ourselves with that one there. Mr. Plumpy.
I'd like to make a motion, please.
All right, let me make sure, John, Mr. Burns, you had your hand up. I want to make sure.
Before you do, Mr. Plumpy, can I offer some additional comments?
Sure.
As part of the submission, there's a full architectural set. And what I've come to realize is that the architectural set doesn't necessarily align, the elevations don't align with the two-dimensional representation, yet alone the three-dimensional representation of the project that we see. So if you're going to ask or suggest approval of the architecture, I suggest that we tie it to a specific series of elevations, like the three-dimensional renderings need to be reflected on sheets A003 and A004. Just so that what we're asking for gets changed on the architectural drawings.
Yes, Mr. Kalinsky, I was going to highlight, we got lost in almost skipping over that fact that we gave Mr. Jabori direction on what we wanted to see, particularly on the front elevation, and we need to make that clear in any conditions as well, so that that's reflective of this approval, because otherwise we approve the set that was submitted, which would have the three small sets of windows.
Well, actually, Mr. Daniel, I'm saying is the construction document set reflects a third design, a different design. It's a little bit closer to what's submitted on the renderings. And I like that, but it's not quite the same. It has a much wider window at the garage face.
All right. And I think, Mr. Burns, you also had your hand up too, so I want to not skip over you either.
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My comment is much the same as Mr. Kalinsky's, and that is I am concerned that we don't have a firm sense of what we're actually approving. We're talking about approving a rendering without architectural drawings with showing detail. We're talking about removing freezes over windows without any detail of how that will be accomplished. And I'm a little concerned that we don't have enough detail as we've discussed the modifications to the project to have something that we can firmly say, this is what we approved.
I'm starting to worry that as well. And Mr. Jabori, I know you wanted to interject something earlier on, but I had several members that wanted to provide some comments. So I don't know if, at this point, it sounds like we may be concerned about approving this set because it's conceptually, all the information is a little muddled. And so an approval would be a little complicated.
Is it possible that when it comes in for review, that Denise can compare the renderings to the architectural two-dimensional drawings to see that they match? In other words, give the client the opportunity to follow up and match it.
We have placed those conditions in the past, Mr. Kalinsky. You know, that it be submitted to staff, you know, to confirm that it met the ARB's directions during that meeting. So Elise, you've got your hand up. Oh, you're muted, Elise.
I think that Mr. Burns makes a very good point. I think that this is totally convoluted, and I think the best thing to do is to defer decision on the architecture pending submission of plans that reflect Mr. Kalinsky's changes, pending submission of documentation that supports what we think we're approving, as opposed to. Anyway, I think we should defer this and ask for complete architectural drawings to reflect what the current thinking of the board is. So I'm suggesting that we defer this for a month and get proper documents so everybody knows what they're looking at and talking about, and that staff look into how the landscape plan should have been handled.
Yeah, and Mr. Dano, I do have a question. Can I follow up with her, with Elise, just on the landscape plan? And Denise, this is for you. So are you saying that there was a landscape plan submitted with the grading plan that we never saw? Is that what you're saying, Denise?
No, I am not. There was no landscape plan submitted with the grading plan.
Okay, so how's he getting his grading plan approved by the county, even though we approved it tonight? So how's he going to get his grading plan approved?
You recommended approval of the grading plan
without a landscape plan.
Gotcha. Rather than approving the grading plan.
Okay, so but he'll be held up at the counter to get his grading permit because he has a landscape plan. Is that correct?
That's what I can only take at face value what Mr. Japori is telling us. Yes.
Got it. Okay, so I would like to also say, just to tag along with the architecture, is to, as a convenience, please submit the landscape plan, even though we can't comment. Well, we can comment, but it's just for information purposes only with the architectural drawings. That's all. Thank you.
All right. So, Mr. Jabori, it sounds like at this current moment, to the members, I'm going to need a motion one way or another, whether to defer, approve, or deny. But it sounds like there's so many pieces that we need to be able to put together on this that approving it is going to make it difficult for us at this moment. It's what I'm hearing. So I'm not sure if you're capable of deferring and bringing it back to us next month with the full package with the changes proposed, or If you wanted to still go up for a vote, it's obviously, as an applicant, that's your right.
Earlier, I got the impression that we were going to adhere to what the 3D rendering showed in regards with the windows, and that is going to follow throughout the building plans. That was my understanding, and then the lighting issue came up. I emphasize that we can resubmit for the board's viewing and unofficial review per se, that we're going to do what we're going to satisfy what the board is asking for regardless. Even with the landscaping, we are going to submit something for you people see what is going on. But I don't know what else to say.
Well, I mean, with regards to the landscaping, as Ms. Murray pointed out and Denise pointed out, we should have been talking about that when we reviewed and approved your grading plan. The grading plan was reviewed, voted on, approved. So that's where that stands. However, as members have pointed out, while we have general agreement on what we think particularly the front elevation should look like from a design perspective, and I think everyone is in support of that, the materials submitted plus the 2D renderings, which were actually in the grading plan submission for us. I don't know if that's how they were provided, but there's a lot of confusion based on materials. And I say that materials submitted to us. So it makes approving this rather challenging because that doesn't necessarily reflect that. To the caveat of coming back to us for our consideration, this is our bite at the apple. So I don't begrudge any member for their point about not wanting to necessarily feel comfortable going with something if they don't have all that information right in front of them. So just to provide those observations on it, again, I would entertain a motion one way or another from a member as to how they want to see this go forward. Obviously, I think we have all the pieces, but they're not presented in a manner, in my mind, that makes it so that I have a clear. Well, I think I understand what we're approving. I don't want to make it a handshake approval. I need it to be a documented approval of all the materials, is what I guess, frankly, saying. With that, I again would look for a motion from a member.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Zellman.
I'll give it a try. Mr. Chairman, I move that the ARB defer action on item ARB 22-LFK-031102 Chainbridge Road, new single-family dwelling located at 1102 Chainbridge Road, McLean, in the Langley Fork Historic Overlay District, tax map number 0223010057 for the construction of a new single-family dwelling is submitted and presented at the May 12, 2022 ARB meeting.
Is there a second?
I'll second it, Mr. Chairman.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion passes. Mr. Javari, again, I apologize for the confusion here in trying to get to this point, but I think at this point the board does not feel as though it is able to approve this, the construction plan. And so if you want to come back to us with the materials as was discussed to represent the set design that I think all the ARB members understand is being proposed, I think it could probably very easily move through approval through this board.
Thank you very much, Mr. Daniel. I just want to emphasize or make sure, are we going to have a concrete board's decision in writing so we know exactly what every member wants to see? Because we are really looking forward to starting this this process for construction as soon as possible. It is disappointing, but I understand the board's position. So whatever we're looking at on the screen, if that is the design change in the building plans, is that satisfactory? Is that, and then they want to see the lighting?
I'm seeing heads nod that indicate that that is the visual representation that your elevations and your architectural drawings should reflect. That was what the members of the board seem to be supportive of. I don't want to speak for all of them, but my understanding is that was the design that seemed to be getting the indication of support. When it came to lighting, it was an understanding of any lighting being done on the site or on the structure so that we understood how it was going to be lit, which was obviously something that would be reflected in the plans as well as, and if there was going to be any site lighting. But that, again, I think we have to decouple the fact that you do have a grading plan that is approved. So that is a whole nother creature that is the ARB approved it. So there it is. Obviously, if you want to bring your conceptual landscape to let us know what that is and tell us about it, that would be greatly appreciated. But what's done is done with that previous vote. We're more focused on the set of architectural plans that you come in next month reflect what we're seeing here and any of the other feedback you got today, which I think really consolidates around that 2D representation.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Jabori.
Sure, indeed. It was nice seeing everybody. Have a good evening.
You as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We move out of items for action and into our workshop sessions. We only have one item for workshop session tonight. That is item number 5, ARB 22 HOL 05WS 7423 Seville Court. I believe I've got that right. In the Holland Hills Historic Overlay District, the project proposes to rebuild and extend a deck and replace siding and windows on a single family dwelling. Carlos Piano represents the proposal. And I apologize, Mr. Piano, if I got that wrong. Are you there with us?
Hi, how are you? Scott Sterling is also here.
All right, I see Mr. Sterl as well. He is muted, but I see him on our.
Yeah, Scott, you need to unmute.
Unmuting. Okay. Okay. Is that good?
And I just want to emphasize, since we've been going a little while, since we are in workshop sessions, but just like action items, we try to ask applicants to limit their presentation to roughly about 8 minutes, so that then we can get into the questions from the members on that. So I don't know if you have a presentation you want to pull up or anything, but just want to emphasize that point. And I know the last item went a little long. Probably should have been more of a workshop, but that's how the cookie goes. But want to highlight that again.
Okay. Can I have access to share my screen?
Hopefully Grace and or Denise are working on that for you. And once they get it approved, you should see a share box that'll become clickable.
Yeah. Oh.
Denise, Grace, you all.
Yeah, do you see the share box?
Yeah, I do. I just that I need to get in and out of this. For some reason, it's not letting me. All right, so can I leave and back real quick?
I wouldn't. Are you saying log out?
Yes, because it's I don't know, system preferences is not letting me share my screen until I quit and reopen this.
I have your presentation, Grace. If you can make me the presenter.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah, we can just do that for you too, so we don't have to worry about you stepping out and leaving like that.
I'm afraid we'd never get you back.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. So Denise, we see your stuff up on the screen. Is that what you're looking for there, sir?
Yes.
All right.
Okay, so we are doing several things, proposing several things for this house. As far as replacement goes, we're looking at the windows, the currently solid doors, the front entrance door, and there's a door on the lower level as well. The siding, there is a front deck that we would like to pretty much rebuild, and it has a 4-foot wide section leading to a 12 by 12 deck, and we would retain the 4x4, the 4-foot section. We'd like to increase the deck size itself to about 16 by 16. And we also would like to replace the gutters. Currently, there are OG gutters. We would replace them in kind, except I understand that the box gutters are preferable, but they do have now OG gutters on. And as far as the additions to the project, we're proposing a carport at the end of the driveway, the current driveway. We would also replace the driveway itself, which is gravel, with an exposed aggregate concrete driveway. And on the back of the house, we would like to construct a screen porch on the upper level of the house. And some of the other things, siding replacement would be in kind, T111 3/8. The front door likely replaced with a solid door. On the lower level, that door might be a full glass door, perhaps with some frosted glass in it, since that will likely be accessing a lower level bedroom. For the decking material, we propose Trex, and then Trex posts and top rail with cable rail in between that.
Denise, if you want to go to the next.
Sorry, I didn't mean to go too fast. I just wanted to.
No, you're going fine.
Okay.
Yeah, that's yeah. We just want to. You've walked through the conceptual thing, so if you want to bring us through some of the materials in your presentation, then we can get to some questions and feedback.
Okay. So I guess we have existing plans and proposed plans, as well as existing elevations and proposed elevations. The carport would be a flat roof carport, as I said, on the left side of the house where the current driveway is, and also next to the front entrance. The screen porch on the back of the house, off of the living room on the main level. Would have a gable roof that would be roofed with the same shingles that are on the house currently at the 312 pitch, with the 2-foot overhang, and repeating the 3-foot module in the screening that is that matches the 3-foot module of the fixed windows.
Denise, if you want to scroll the next one. So these are the existing conditions if you want to see. Scott, do you see that screen?
Yeah, I can see it. Right, so you can see there in the front, where to the right is where the 4-foot section of the deck leads over to the 12 by 12 deck. It's really a walkway, actually. It's not really, and it's currently cantilevered, and they're the joists that extend beyond the face of the foundation are not treated lumber. They were just you know, the same floor joists that are inside just extend outside. So we'd replace the structure with treated material, but as I said, we would install the Trex on top of as a decking material.
We can go to the next one, maybe Denise, so they can.
Yeah, so there you can see in the plan the carport on the left, the deck in the front, and I have to apologize. On this plan, we are showing a 12 by 16 new deck size, but as I spoke with the owner, his preference was to be 16 feet wide and 16 feet deep. And then the screen porch in the back is about 15 by 18 with steps that would lead down to the lower level.
Yeah, the next one will show us the plot where you can see what it says proposed garage is a typo. It's a carport.
Yeah, it does say carport in the small text. It's not in the red.
The next one are the proposed elevations.
Right.
Okay. By all means, yeah, are there any other comments, or because I was going to say, depending on what you want, I know as a workshop, we want to get into input to your design. So
Right.
Let me know if there's anything else you all want to add, or otherwise we can start taking comments and questions from the board members.
I think I'm done.
All right. And if I could ask if you would go back to the first one that shows the list of all the activities, Denise, just so I can, there were a lot of things being done.
Yes.
I think that was and I think that might be helpful for us all to see just for a second. And then obviously if there are board members that have individual questions, Elise, I see your hand up. Is that from last time, or is this for this one? I don't know if I didn't hear you, but I'm
here.
Okay.
This is a question for staff. How far into the front yard are decks and things like that allowed to go?
We are just
16. This is for staff. This is 16 feet. Does that extend into the areas that you're not supposed to be building in?
It does not. It respects it just by a little bit, you know,
By
like
how
an inch or so. We still have, it's a 35-foot front yard setback. So even though we're extending the current deck by 4 feet toward the street, we still have 35 feet, 35 feet 1 inch or something like that. So it does respect the setback.
Okay, and basically I have concerns about the aesthetics of that, and I will leave that to the design professionals.
Okay.
Thank you, Elise. Again, any other members raising hands or waving at me on the camera screen if you've got some comments to share. Again, as a workshop session, we're looking for sharing input and ideas into the proposed concept and what we might want to see when the application comes back for an action item. John, Mr. Burns.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For everyone's edification, this is a corner lot, and so there's a front yard setback on 2 sides.
Yes.
That would be, from the way that the plans were shown to us, it would be the right side and the bottom of the plans. I'm very grateful that in proposing a carport, you're going to use a flat roof carport that will have a minimal profile. And I note that it comes close, but doesn't exceed the side yard setback. This is also a very heavily treed lot. I don't know if you're planning on any clearing. Oftentimes that happens when people make changes to homes in Holland Hills. But right now, these changes would be difficult to see, frankly, from most viewpoints on both White Oaks Drive, which is the street on the plat map to the bottom, and then the little cul-de-sac that its formal address is. You said that you wanted to make the deck 16 by 16, and you showed us a rendering of 12 by 16.
Yes.
So if you were to extend it those additional feet, would it be to the left on that drawing that you're now showing, or would it be to the right?
To the left.
To the left. Okay, I'm glad to hear you say that, because there's a very steep slope, and that would become like a prow of a ship sticking out there.
Yeah.
So I was quite concerned about that. You're proposing a screened porch, and your existing condition shows a patio, but your rendering seems to show it's a 2-story porch. Is that correct?
Well, that side of the house is a full 2 stories out of grade.
Well, I understand, but you're proposing a screened porch on the patio, but the elevation drawing seems to indicate it's a 2-story porch. Is that correct?
Well, I think what you may be seeing in the that says patio is just the dashed lines of the porch above. Is the stairway does come down to connect the patio to the screen porch.
Oh, no, I was thinking of your existing conditions drawings.
Okay, yes, there is a patio there at the
Right,
lower
there
level.
is a patio, okay. And my assumption had been, until I saw your elevation drawings, that you were going to simply put a screen porch down there. But now you're talking about, if you can go back to your photographs, maybe you can describe where the, it's
Yes.
the photograph in the lower right.
Yes.
Right, okay. So where is that screen porch going to be, and what will it cover?
It's going to connect on that level. It would be off of the upper level.
Yeah, okay, but you can move your cursor over top of that photograph, or maybe, oh, I'm sorry, Denise has to, sorry. Okay, so you've got that window wall up there.
Yes.
Okay, and then you have the double windows. I'm talking about the upper level of the house.
Yes.
Right, so that patio, does it go all the way across to that retaining wall that I'm seeing, I think, in the right-hand photograph?
It does go to the retaining wall, yes.
Okay, and then it comes across, and so then it will cover part, but not all of those windows on the upper floor?
That's correct.
Okay, so how is that joint going to be managed? I mean, if you've got a 2-by there.
Yes, you do.
And you're going to have a porch come into there, so how's that going to intersect?
I have thought about that. My suggestion would be to take a 2x4 or 2x6 and join the 1.5-inch face of it directly to the mullion between the glass. Yeah. And then beyond that, we can turn the 2x4 or 4x4 sideways, so that we can make the screening then to form the side of the wall of the screen porch.
Okay, and then that same photograph, how far to the left will that porch extend?
It extends. There are actually, you can see there are 2 sliding doors separated by a small piece of wall on that elevation. In the photograph. The photograph in the lower left, you can see it.
Okay, so those sliding doors exist, but they don't open onto anything?
That's correct.
Aha, okay.
Today they'd have railings in front of them, but they didn't then, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So the porch would extend to between the 2 sliding doors.
Okay, so the sliding door on the left will not have a floor outside?
It would have partial floor, because that's where the
stair is.
Yes.
The stair
So
landing will be there.
I believe that I had the landing long enough to incorporate that left sliding door.
Okay, okay. Now, I realize that this is probably the most private elevation of the house in terms of, public
Yes, it is.
viewpoints and
Right.
all.
Yeah,
But
well, actually, you can see
it,
right.
what you're proposing is a very substantial change.
Yes.
And so working out the details of how that will be accomplished, I think, is something that requires some thought and some study. You've put some thought and study into it already, but that would be a concern in terms of respecting the historic architecture. Particularly when you have a long window wall like that, you suddenly plunk a wall coming perpendicular out from it. That's quite a significant change, and I would be concerned about that.
All right.
But those are my prime comments. You had mentioned that the house is currently sided with T111.
Yes.
And is that this type of house, at least in the earlier versions of this house design, were often tongue and groove, vertical tongue and groove, but that's not the case here?
It is not the case. That's correct.
It is not the case. Okay. And then is it T111, or is it the more common stuff that you can get today called Type 303? The Type 303 is rough sanded, and it has essentially a trapezoidal groove as opposed to a square edge groove like T111 had.
I don't know that for sure, the difference. Everyone's talked about it, because we had our Howland Hills meeting last night. They've been calling it T111. I have not heard that other term.
Yeah, the T111 was a rectangular edged groove with a flat bottom, and the Type 303, and it's smooth sanded. The Type 303 is the kind of stuff you can go over and buy at Home Depot or Lowe's, and that is rough sanded, and it has a groove that ostensibly is dimensionally the same, but it has flared edges as opposed to perpendicular to the face.
I see.
And it has 3 striations at the bottom of the groove.
Okay.
And if you go around and you can find some T111 on an older Howland Hills house and compare it to the modern material, it's very different. If your house currently has a Type 303, fine, replace it in kind. But if a house has the original rectangular edged grooves in the plywood, you might consider the visual impact of that if you replace it all the way around.
Okay. Well, does it make a difference if it's 3/8 or 5/8 thickness?
In thickness, no.
Okay.
No, it's we're primarily concerned with the visual qualities. If it's 3/8 or 5/8, unless you need the thicker dimension for structural reasons to give you more shear resistance, that's something different.
Right. Okay. I do know it's 3/8 currently.
Okay. Those are my comments, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Burns. I'm not seeing any other hands up at the moment, but I have some of my comments are very similar to Mr. Burns. I think that's a very illuminating information about the sliding glass door that goes to nowhere at the moment. So I will agree with John, though, that I'm going to want to see some careful thought and consideration design, even though this is a side that is not, the most private facing. It is, kind of eating into a very significant, architecturally significant side of the building in the sense of the amount of detail and materials there, and how that's going to be done in a sensitive way that's not going to detrimentally affect that as much as possible. I think that's where one of my key concerns rested, was with the screen, 2-story screen addition. The carport and the other items don't really bother me as much. I think obviously, given this district and the intent to add things like carports, I think that's only feels natural in some sense, as long as it's done the right way. That's really where I think when you all come back for design, I want something that's going to be, I just don't want to overwhelm that side of the building, even though given where it is, it's not something that someone would typically see. I still want to give consideration, because I feel like these were 360-degree designed houses. They were not,
right.
Our current age that we live in, we get a lot of architecture that is, you know,
Facade
maybe
is,
the front facade only, and
Yeah.
these that's where my eye goes a lot. The only other comment I have, I would agree with Miss Murray. I get that you want as much porch size as you can get, but I feel like, you know, pushing into that setback, I don't want it to dominate things. So does it have to be that big? You know, I'm fine with, I guess with John's comment about the width of it, but I really feel like stepping back a little bit would be a little better than trying to just go for the maximum. Is the maximum
Okay.
absolutely what's needed, or can we be a little bit more sensitive on that end?
it wasn't that we were trying to go to the maximum. That's kind of what the depth we thought about doing, and it just so happened to be that it was, you know, right on the setback line. So
All right. Any other, Mr. Kalinsky, I see your hand just went up.
All right, thanks. First of all, I want to thank the applicant for bringing this in front of us. It's a pretty exciting project, you know, with the historic overlay district having just been approved. There's a lot of original context and material here to work with. I think the proposal for the carport is with the flat roof, very well done. I think you know, excited to see how it will detail out to make sure that we're keeping the consistency.
Right.
With regards to the deck, the proportions of the deck, I think, is more critical to me than the actual size. You know, a 1, 2, or 3 foot difference really isn't going to concern me, but the original deck being square and then the new deck being, at least as originally illustrated, elongated, was, you know, just didn't seem consistent with the style, with Goodman's style. But so if it were 16 by 16 or 15 by 15 or 14 by 14 along the face, I'd feel comfortable with that. So
okay,
I'm assuming cable rail. Did I read that right?
Yes.
Okay, good with that. The front entry is particularly what you have up on the screen right now, the front door entry.
Yes.
You have a corner approach stair there, and it looks like you're proposing to remove that.
Right.
That is a Goodman touch that I would be sorry to see go. I understand to access the you're going to put a stair that'll access you underneath the carport and give you some sort of weather protection as you go that way. But if there were a way to incorporate that corner stair back in, I think that you know, that would preserve some of the integrity of the original house.
Sure, and you know, I do actually, I didn't know that about the Goodman signature there, but I appreciate that, and I like the corner stair myself. I just wasn't sure it was necessary, but we can certainly retain that.
So, and this, you know, this being a relatively new a new historic district, and they're mid-century modern, it's not, you know, it's not the old colonial era stuff that more commonly been treated, you know, with a historicist's eye. One thing I, you know, hope to do is remind people that you know, retaining as much of the original as materials as possible and the original layout and design is preferable.
Okay.
So, and realize, you know, you need to modernize the house in order to live in it. I think there's a lot of excellent examples within Holland Hills of people who have done that and you know, kept the integrity. You know, hope that your detailing will do that. Question for you on the gutters. Did you did say they were OG right now. Were you going to intended to replace them in kind, or were you going to put a box gutter on there in its?
Well, if it were my house, I'd put a box gutter on it, but
okay.
the owner would prefer to do the OG. You know, that's just, you know, probably because it's less expensive, but
understand. What a wasted opportunity though,
yeah,
to bring this back to what it should be.
Right.
With regards to Mr. Burns' comments on the T111. You know, there is a distinct difference between, you know, the modern and the original materials. If you were to replace all of the siding and then replace all of the windows with double pane instead of single pane, and replace the gutters and add in new decks and new materials, you're getting close to replacing a lot, you know, a lot of the historic materials. The problem with the historic materials versus modern materials is we know that, you know, the connections, the thicknesses, all those change a bit. Even attachment to the house changes, and sometimes you lose what the house is, and that's one of the things I want to caution
Okay.
against. That if not carefully detailed and carefully constructed, it could look very, and you know, it could look very average,
Mm-hmm.
and lose its mid-century modern appeal, and devalue the house.
Right. Okay.
So one last thing, I understand, and I was kind of looking at your screen, Porch, understand how you're connected it to the house and all, and I see what you did with the 3-foot intervals to go with the 3-foot window spacing. But looking at it proportionally, there was just something disturbing me, and then I, you know, came to the realization it's probably because you have the rail heights at 3 feet, whereas the
Yes.
hopper windows are at 30 inches or 28 inches or whatever that dimension is.
Right.
So
But perhaps. Oh, go ahead.
My question to you as an architect, can you take up the challenge and represent it somehow on the exterior at that lower horizontal line, yet still provide the protection on the interior with the proper rail heights?
Yeah, we can. I think that's a good suggestion. We can do something, I think.
I think that's just going to come down to when you get deeper into the detailing as to how you do it and
right,
how you make that happen. So you know, with that, those are my comments. Excited to see this come back, and you know, hopefully you preserve as much as you can, and if not, the actual materials identical or darn close replacement. So
okay.
thank you for your efforts.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kalinsky. John, your hand is still up, so I wonder if you have additional comments.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You mentioned in your presentation that the current walkway leading to the deck is cantilevered.
Yes.
Which means it appears to float over the landscape.
Yes, I understand that.
Yeah, and so and you mentioned that you're going to now support it from below. If at all possible, can you get the supports for that back in the shadow so that they're not out at the front edge of the deck? I think that will preserve the elegance of that projected feature.
Yes, and I have something to say about that, and also let me say about the deck itself. We certainly would set the beam back 2 feet, so the floor joist would cantilever, and we can also set the posts that support the beam in from the ends of the deck at 2 feet as well. So that certainly would be would let that seem to float. And as far as the walkway is concerned, I believe we can clear span that length without any intermediate support posts. So we would,
wow.
So we'd probably use a pretty good sized beam, but I think we can do it. So there
That would be quite a span. So good luck with that.
I don't think it's only you know it's only supporting 2 feet of load though. So. And even if it's a 16-foot span or whatever it is, I don't know exactly what it is, but yeah. I think we can do that.
You have to be mindful of deflection in the middle of that span.
Yes.
You have all those nice horizontal lines, and then you have this low curve at the deck part too. It would spoil the horizontality of those lines.
Yeah, no, I understand that. We'll just make it a stiff beam. Maybe it needs some steel.
All right, thank you, Mr. Burns. Mr. Kalinsky, your hand's still up. Did you have any additional comments? Okay. So I feel like we give you a lot of input, a lot of things that I think we're comfortable with, a lot of material information that we're going to definitely want to know about.
Okay, right.
When you come back, some particular information about the porch, in particular the two-story screen porch and methodology being done there. So I think the comments that were given are a lot of feedback on what we'll want to see in a discussion for the presentation for action. Are do you have any other questions? Or if so, I think we've given you a lot to go back with, and eventually I expect we'll see you come back for action in the near future.
Yeah, I do have one other question about replacing. There are currently sliding windows underneath the fixed glass. Not in all locations, obviously, but in some of the locations. Do you have a problem if that is replaced with an awning window of a narrow frame awning window?
Well, I mean, this is just me, but I kind of Mr. Kalinsky summarized it very well in the preservation mindset of, obviously we want to go with first, maintaining and preserving the existing materials, and then replace in kind as needed. And then after replace in kind, it would then go to, okay, well, what's the new material we're replacing something with? So I personally, as the architectural historian on the board, am more in mind with keeping what's there if the fabric is in good condition and maintainable, rather than modernizing for the sake of modernizing. If it's working and it can be maintained, then maintain it. With new construction, that's all out the window. But with existing materials, I obviously recognize that replacing kind has to happen sometimes when things degrade. But I would prefer to see the same thing if that was what it was originally designed for. I mean, that's what I would like to see maintained if possible, kind of similar to what Mr. Kalinsky emphasized in a few areas. Okay. I don't know if any other board members. John has his hand up, so Mr. Burns might also have a comment as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, the current operable lower windows, are they steel or aluminum?
I believe they're aluminum.
They're aluminum. Okay,
Yeah.
so this house, at my recollection of looking it up in the Fairfax County property records, was built in 1968. Is that correct?
I believe, yes.
Yeah, so that was fairly late in the evolution of Holland Hills.
Right.
And yeah, so they use some aluminum windows, and they're kind of problematic. Most of them, in my encounter, have been mill finish aluminum, and so they become very difficult to slide open and shut. And so I can understand the need to replace them, and probably they may not have the strength or depth of frame to just pop in some IGUs in place of the what I assume is single plate.
Yes.
So yes, oftentimes. I happen to live in Holland Hills and have we refinished all of our steel windows, they're awning windows, and had insulated glass put into them. So we deal with sweat from the cold in the winter,
Right.
And the steel parts of it, and I'm sure this owner dealt with that with the aluminum frame as well. Because in 1968, I doubt that they had thermal breaks.
Right.
So that's something you have to deal with. But looking at your photographs, I only see maybe one or two windows that have a slider in the lower window.
I haven't counted them.
Yeah.
I believe there should be at least one in each bedroom, though, and I don't know about the living room and the dining room area. So.
Yeah. But what people have done, a very common thing, is they just say, I'm just going to do with fewer operable windows. And they'll, as you suggested, have one operable lower sash in each room. When originally, I think these houses, all of the lower sash were operable.
Okay.
So if you go around the community and look, you'll see you have those 9 rows of windows that some of the houses have, and you'll have 1 or 2 operable, and the rest are just fixed glass.
Right.
So the community is kind of inconsistent in that way, but that's something that you have to consider, because it's a lot more expensive to put in operable sash than a fixed piece of glass.
Right. And it's nice to have the operable glass.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Seeing no other hands up, I think we've given you a lot to go with, and we'll look forward to seeing you all come back to us for action in the future.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
All right. Thank you to
Thank
both of
you.
you.
Thank you.
All right. That concludes our one workshop session. We have no presentations on related to action items or future action items. So that brings us on to board and staff items. All right. First item up is the review and action on approval of the previous month's minutes for April 2022. Mr. Burns, I know you have provided staff with some edits on the minutes and as well as a few comments to myself that I think might bear discussion before we talk about voting on them. It's just that obviously these meetings are recorded, so it does make for developing minutes rather easy, given the fact that we have us in live conversation as opposed to having to sit there and keep up with our ramblings sometimes. But they obviously are abridged, I would say, even then when they're typed back out. Mr. Burns provided some edits to kind of clarify a few particular things on his comments there. But obviously I would remind members, if you look at the comments or look at the minutes, they are not direct transcribes of what we say. They are summaries of what we say. And John, I don't know if you want to add anything onto that, but I just wanted to give that context that you gave to me, that John gave comments to kind of bring his more into conformance about what he provided input on during the last meeting, particularly given the fact they were Holland Hills topics. But I don't know, John, if you had anything else you wanted to add on that before we talk about voting on this draft minutes. You're muted on me though too, John.
Yeah, I'm sorry. With regard to Holland Hills, you're going to find that I'm fairly thin-skinned. And since these were the first three things that we considered for Holland Hills, I thought it was very important that we set kind of a tone. And so I was very careful in the things that I said, and I wanted to make sure that the minutes reflected what I said. So I went back, and Ryan, you do us a lot of good stuff because going back and beginning to transcribe spoken word and to make a cohesive and comprehensible minutes from it it's a lot harder than I thought. So I first off, thank you for that, because that's quite a task you undertake every month for us. But in this particular case, I was concerned that the comments I made were as accurate as I remember them, and so that's why I went back, and it was tedious, but I think it was fruitful and educational, and it taught me something about me, in that I tend to mumble, and I tend to ramble. So enough said. I won't ramble anymore.
I honestly think when all our supervisors voted us in, they actually look for rambling as a requirement. So I think that's a sticking point for being in the ARB. I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention, that if you in particular have some detailed comments on an item, I know obviously Denise sends out the minutes for us all to look at, but it bears fruit to take a glance at them just in case you feel like you want to make sure that Ryan's translation of what we've said comes across accurately. Always give them a look. But John submitted those comments into Denise. I guess the question would be if any other members had any other comments they wanted to provide on the draft meeting minutes. Seeing none, I would look for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the April minutes of the Architectural Review Board meeting with the edits noted, and approve payment to our recording secretary.
All right, there's a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Orr, and follow up by Mr. Kalinsky there. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. All right, Treasurer's report. Denise.
Okay, so you started with the balance, beginning balance March 31st of $18,245.01. There were 2 adjustments, minor adjustments, with an ending balance of on April 30th of $18,247.77. I noted that the clerk was not paid, and I went back to confirm payment and just missed the payroll run. So the clerk was paid for the March minutes, but he was paid on May 6th.
All right. Any comments from members? All right. Seeing none. Administrative. Agenda. So you saw I sent a rambly email to you all, as my wife described it as when she read it. Obviously, we got a few comments from folks about the agenda and how the meetings were running a little long. We've been there before, but I decided that given the input, we try to take a little bit of a tack to tackle that. Some of the things were just reinforcing things we've had before, as you saw, highlighting that we do try to set time limits. We had a particularly complicated situation right here with the 3-part application item 1 that this meeting, but that, I don't think is a normal situation for us, I will say. But the attempt was to try to reinforce some of that. Denise and I are tracking things on the back end to try to help remind folks on that. Same with the workshop sessions. While there isn't a time limit set for them, we thought, well, why not just apply the same thing? Because we're not limiting the time that we have to ask questions, just the time limits for the applicant to present to us, because really what we want to get to is our thoughts on that. The only other thing I'll just highlight just in my email is that I do meet with Denise before our meetings. And one of the things that we highlighted to Denise was that our bylaws don't specify any real structure on agenda shaping or limitations on agendas, but that gives us a lot of discretion, which means if we look like we have a stacked agenda coming up for a lot of reviews, we can pretty much put a cap on things like workshops and say we don't have the space to do it right now because we might have 5 things up for action and we know they're going to be controversial and we don't have the time to then doing that. And I think that's something that is helpful for us because, as we saw last month, workshops can run real long and really snarl the amount of time and also taint the amount of input we'll give to an applicant because we're tired. So, but I wanted to open it up for discussion here too, but we don't have to go deep into it tonight too, because I know we're getting on the hours there. But Joe, you got your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Chris, and I appreciate your memo and everything, and I think it's a good start. As a observation tonight, I went ahead and just timed the workshop. The workshop talk took almost 50 minutes for the one item. I think that still seems excessive. I know it's a Holland Hills thing, and I thought about this during the presentation. And Mr. Burns, you are a resident of Holland Hills, and you are very fluid in Holland Hills and have the most comments. Would it make sense for you to perhaps meet with the people prior to the workshop session so that getting into the minutia of things is fantastic, but I'm just thinking to speed things along a little bit because information is very important. My concern is if we had 2 other workshop items and they all take 45 to 50 minutes apiece, we're back to where we were last month. So I think somehow if we can, maybe we should put some type of time limit on our workshop, because these are workshops. They can come back for 1 or 2 more workshops if they don't feel they have all the information they need. Look, I'm the one who probably was most vocal last meeting, and I apologize if I upset anybody, but I'm concerned we may fall into that trap because you said it's yourself, Mr. Daniel, we do ramble. Okay, and I am a rambler right now, as you can tell. So we all need a rambler to drive. But the bottom line is I think less is more, perhaps, on these things, and especially in the workshop. The workshop seems the one that starts to spin out of control, I think, in my opinion. And again, I'm a landscape architect. I'm sure if I was an architect, I'd say, hey, no, we need 3 hours on each item. But no, I think we just need to be conscientious of what you said, Chris. Fatigue starts to set in, but then also give everybody a fair shake so that the person who's waiting for their workshop item 3 hours from now doesn't have to wait 3 hours. They only have to wait, 60 minutes. Just an observation. So
what I'll say, just for John here, I think that would put John in an awkward situation given the amount of caveats he has to put on himself for any item for Holland Hills. I know he could be very helpful in providing that advice, but I worry that would put him in a sticky situation.
Right.
What I'll say is, when talking with Denise, thought that, 2 workshops is the most we can handle if we have a regular agenda. But I do agree that Holland Hills ones seem to present situations where they do get a lot more detailed conversation. And I told her that because there's no guidance on this, we could restrict it to simply having a single workshop if we look like this is going to be a complicated one. And that could be something the chair could say, hey, we're only going to do 1 workshop this session because we've got 4 items for action. We're not going to have time. The problem is I can't stop most of y'all from asking questions when you get your chance to ask questions. I can get the applicant to stick to 8 minutes and present his info or her info. But then when we get to each one of us talking, I mean, it's easier to do in group that we could interject a little bit and say, hey, okay, we got it. We'll, get that information in. But I think this was the first attempt to try to rein that in a little bit. And there's only so much one can do on that front, because that is part of the goal of the workshop, is to get a little bit more free form with the applicant. And I'll acknowledge the action item. We had a snarl with 2 and 3. We approved a grading plan with Sands landscape, and then walked into a design. We basically did a workshop on item 3.
Right.
So that, I think that's got to be a little bit more tightened up. And part of that is making sure when we get something submitted in, and this is something for me to work with Denise on, is that probably should have not made it to us then. We were missing some things there, and
Right.
should have not been up there on the deck for an action item, because it became what should have been a workshop.
Yeah. And Mr. Daniel, just to tag along what you said there, I think, yeah, you're right. The workshops are very important. I just think, I think more time management on the workshops itself still need, even if it's just 1, because if we had 4 action items for this versus only 1 action item, I think we'd be looking at, another 11:30 meeting or something like that. I'm just thinking, I don't want to be the problem child here, but I just want to, and I don't think I am. I'm just voicing, I think I've seen other jurisdictions do it differently. That's what I'm trying to say, like in public, like the Arlington counties and so forth of the world. They basically have they say, okay, we're moving along. I mean, I think everybody, Mr. Chairman, you have an opportunity to say, okay, I think we had enough information, perhaps move forward or not, on the workshops. But I guess you're right. Everybody needs to voice their opinion, but I think I'm just concerned that it's going to get out of control one more time, but I'm sure it'll get better.
John, you've got your hand up. Oh, you're muted.
Okay, try and be polite and not coughing and stuff like that, and put yourself on mute, and then you forget to take yourself off. Okay. Joey, absolutely agree that these things go on too long. I do think we could be more efficient. In some jurisdictions, I think staff has a lot of leeway to meet with applicants and spend more time with them. But we know that Denise is up to her neck in multiple assignments, and I doubt, you workflows to the competent employee until they submerge, and that's something that we need to avoid. We did have a system a little while ago where we agreed that in people in each magisterial district, and not all of which are represented on the board, would go out and kind of be the advocate and take a look at these projects as they come in and such like that. I'm more than willing to do it, although as Chris alluded, I may have to talk to the county attorney about what I can and cannot do, and not exert undue influence or set a bad precedent for other historic overlay districts. One observation I made to Chris and Denise earlier, and that is, in most of the work that we review for action, we're dealing with proposed new construction in a historic overlay district. It's new construction. It's infill, or in the case tonight, it's replacement infill. And in Holland Hills, it's essentially built out so that everything that comes to us is dealing with an historic house, and that's different. Right? We're used to mitigating the impact of new construction in the historic overlay district. Here, we're actually dealing with impacts of the historic buildings themselves. And it's going to take more time for us to deal with those issues. because like she pointed out tonight, when they're through with what they propose to do on this house, you know, you're going to have new windows, new siding, new deck, new carport, new porch. What's left that's historic aside from the brick? You know, and so that's something that we need to take in, and that will take time, and it's a workload that I think Laura was very apprehensive about when they first came up with the idea of a Holland Hills Historic Overlay District.
Yeah, well, the one thing to add is I know the two of us have talked offline is that you have homes around coming in too, so that's going to be another conundrum. That's 400 some homes, so it's going to be the same bailiwick there, and I'm just wondering is maybe, you know, like I said, less is more. So is it better to have someone come back for 2 workshops versus trying to cram everything into one so that it doesn't seem to be so laborious during that, you know, to have a 50-minute one, just do a 20-minute one, you know, and I'm just, so you can cover more homes per thing, or that person comes back because the architect was very good in this one, but you know, there's a lot of things he did not know that you question on, John, which is good. So gosh, come back and do it. I would hope that he comes back for another workshop. I would think that you guys would want him to come back for another workshop, right? Or do you think you should go straight to
It'd be
approval?
great if they did, but many times, as we just saw with the one we voted on today, they came for one and then they come for an action.
Yeah.
The other thing I think, and Elise pointed this out to me, is, and I'm going to try to, I will say, and I tried to, my wife censored me a little bit, managing this in a digital environment and interjecting on people is laborious. And I feel like Jason is probably one of the few people that can get this as an attorney in particular, and what he has to do. It is just to interject on somebody in this environment and get them to understand that they need to stop. They need to give us a chance to talk, or that someone wants to talk and I don't walk over you, because I am constantly cognizant of that too. It's, you know, I was lamenting about not having 3 screens because I've got all this stuff pulled up to track also my own personal comments on the project, let alone running the meeting. I think we lose time there too. Getting a presentation started up, someone not being, you know, muted. We can't hear this person. I'm going to sign off and come back on, you know. So I think you're right. We need to tell folks, okay, you heard our comment. You don't have to answer right now. We don't have to re-engineer this situation here. But now you know we have a concern with that item. Come back to us with an answer. You know, that's what they're wanting from us, but not a hard denial or approval. And so some of those times, if I can stop someone from going, okay, you heard John's comments or Mr. Burns's comments or Mr. Plumpy's comments, don't have to try to answer them all right now. Go back and get us a revision to this. If you've got a quick answer, sure, but let's not actually architect or actually landscape the design live. That's not what you're asking for. Those are the situations you're talking about. Hey, maybe you could meet with this member offline and they could help you with this, and that you could get into that nuance. And we're going to try to, I want to keep trying to improve it, because I don't think this is going away yet. It doesn't seem.
It's not, yeah. It's not, yeah. Okay.
Any other comments on it? Obviously, again, if you have other suggestions, please send them to me and Denise. We're going to keep trying to improve this. She's highlighted to me that June's meeting looks like it's going to have a lot of action items, potentially several Holland Hills ones. So I'm of the mind that if there are, I'm probably going to either reduce or have no workshops at this point, because if we're going to have a full deck of Holland Hills action items, there's going to be a lot of comments anyways. And I don't know if there's any benefit to an applicant coming in for a workshop if they're going to be we're going to be getting to them after 9 o'clock. Doesn't make sense.
Agreed. Yeah. I mentioned to Denise as perhaps on the agenda, and you know, you have the time of when the anticipated time things would be done with on those items. You know, if it's, you allot 20 minutes per thing, so you say, okay, well, you look at your watch, okay, it's 8:20, but we're at 8:40. Okay, or as you get close to 8:20, so excuse me, is there any, you know, just say cards at the time, hey.
We could definitely try to do that. I'll say, having sat in on the last Board of Supervisors meeting because of our bylaws, that was a riot to watch their time agenda schedule for what they think they're going to be
out the window.
They don't even care. They don't even care.
Well, but we care. That's for the caring board.
Well, but no, that might be after I think we'll have to kind of assess what the average action item looks like, you know, because, you know, like, for example, the first one we had, real quick, I think that was a 10-minute maybe total.
Right.
But the 3 stacked in a row, that went on for longer than it needed to.
Exactly. And I just think the workshop, well, I think the workshops on the average, this month and last month, I think we're at the 45 to 50 minute per item on the workshops. That's just my observation. But
Well, and I'll throw out there the last thing I mentioned in my little email was that might be something we want to consider for a task force of members to try to develop some more actual language for what we want these to look like, because it basically says in our bylaws, we'll have workshops. It doesn't give
Right.
any guidance on what they are. And that's
Yeah.
great because that lets us kind of do what we want. But at the same time, maybe we need to be a little more structured. But I don't want to try to solve that tonight. But if
Yeah.
folks wanted to try to do that, we could propose that and make it more codified.
Just 2 cents worth. I think you're going to need to, especially with the two new districts, Holmes Run and Holland Hills. That's just my 2 cents.
I hear someone nominating themselves to head up a task force.
Maybe.
No, no commitments like that now. But that is something that I think we need to think about, because you're right. With Holmes Run coming up, it's not going to go away. All right. I don't see anyone else raising a hand on this. So for the sake of the hour, Denise, tell us about the transition to Zoom, so that we're now knowing we're all comfortable with WebEx and we're not probably going to have to we're going to switch to Zoom now.
Well, hopefully you all have been doing Zoom meetings as well. I know I have, and I found it an easy platform to work with. So I just got a Zoom account and got approved to use it. So we're going to try it at the June meeting. That being said, we're going to have multiple sessions of trial and error before we get to you all in the meeting and using Zoom with you all. So I'm going to enlist the help of many people to try to help me experiment. And even tonight, I asked Grace to help me elevate and demote participants in this meeting. So we're trying other things to try to make this go easier for everybody as well. Mr. Burns couldn't get in the meeting this evening. I'm hoping that doesn't happen with Zoom. I think what I understand is WebEx is a very difficult platform to work with, and we've all experienced it. And Teams has not been a piece of cake either. So I have not heard any bad words about Zoom. So fingers crossed this helps with the technology side anyway. And all of you will be able to enter the meeting.
Denise, did you say June we're going to do a Zoom meeting?
Yes, that's if all goes well. You all, if it's a total failure, Chris, and I'm not able to do it, you'll receive a WebEx invitation from me, because that's the tried and true. But I'm going to be testing it out, and I'm hoping that we will have the Zoom up and ready. If for some reason we go back to in-person meetings, I want to let you know that we have room 232 reserved in the government center for the June 9th meeting. If for some reason I have no inkling that this is happening. The COVID numbers are rising in Fairfax County, so that does not look like that's the trajectory, but I wanted to let you know that it will not be in conference rooms 9 and 10. It will be in conference room 232, which is the first conference room that you come to when you're in the main atrium area on the right-hand side. So
Ooh, that's a nice one.
it is. I thought
the one at the big table.
Yes, I peeked in. It does look nice.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
How come we can't get that one whenever we go back? Anyways, never mind. Okay, that's good to know. But let's.
But I think it will be virtual, and I'm hoping it will be over Zoom.
All right, thank you. I would encourage everyone to try to get on a little early just to test the Zoom waters when that comes in, so we can work through any of those, so that we make sure we got enough time to have a quorum. All right, thanks for that, Denise. On to discussion and updates and reports. Lorton Workhouse Master Plan. Denise?
Sure, and I'm just going to touch on this briefly, and I'm hoping that Samantha and Joe can chime in, because they have been participating. So staff and ARB representatives Joe and Samantha attended a stakeholders meeting on April 26th, and then staff and Joe attended a tour at the workhouse site on April 29th. And then the next stakeholder meeting is a visioning charrette, which will take place on Friday, May 20th, which I will not be in town for. But I think Joe and I'm hoping Samantha is able to join us as well.
Joe
Yeah,
Smith, any comments? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll say just real brief. Basically, it was a great tour, and they asked a lot of things about what can be for the uses and everything. It was just the county staff, not the design team. The design team will be doing the charrette on the 20th. And my goal is to be really heavily involved with this because it's right down my street, so to speak, on 123. And to the point where I may get, well, I'm really leaning strongly in becoming a member of the board of the Lawton Workhouse itself. There's a representative there, not just an ARB member, so I may have to recuse myself of some things, but maybe not. But I'm still an ARB member only for this, but I like to get pretty in the weeds like John is in Homes Run. This is my hood, the Workhouse. Okay, so I think I'd like to pour myself into it as much as possible that I physically and time-wise can. And it's very close to my heart. And so that's it. So sorry. That's it.
Samantha, any comments?
Yes, I have to say that, and everybody hear Joe loud and clear. So we have a very strong presence there. It was a very say that the whole exercise is pretty intense. I can see that, and I can see the charade. They were scheduled for 4-hour charade. I can see that's a very intense exercise. Try the whole program and try to mapping out a master plan is well thought, and it will be very intense.
What and I want to just tag along that. What's interesting, all these stuff, our firm was involved with the first master plan. Different firm is now doing it, but it's interesting. Time has stood still for the past 10 years. You'll see buildings half done, wiring hanging down, and so forth in these buildings. They just don't have money. They need in the county. It's not county money now. Well, the counties right now. We've tried to push the county to do some things just verbally out there on that first site visit to find some money from the county or somehow do a public-private partnership. Money's the key thing here. So the smash plan is going to be nice, but perhaps it'll still be in the same stalled position after it's done, unfortunately. But it all depends. Right now, they're trying to get private businesses to be there for food and beverage and so forth. So I think there's enough catalyst now with COVID gone, and I think it's going to do much better. That's all.
All right. Thank you both for participating in that. Look forward to hearing more updates. I don't see any hands from any members for questions. We've already talked about it a little bit, but Homes Run Acres, Denise, where are we at with that living HOD?
Yeah, so the next and final work group meeting is scheduled for June 15th over Teams, and staff's going to be bringing back all the elements to plug into the website platform to prepare for the survey. So that's what's happening on June 15th. And then later in the summer, in the month of July, towards the end of July, we'll have a community meeting where we talk about the contributing and non-contributing structures, the boundaries, the draft zoning ordinance, and comp plan amendment. So we'll be bringing that back to the broader community. And then at the end of July, the poll will launch. So we're doing another poll prior to the actual staff report and the board hearings.
All right. Thanks a bunch, Denise.
Mm-hmm.
Any comments from members on that one? Not seeing any. That takes us on to correspondence and announcements. I don't think we have any updates on that front.
I have nothing, yeah.
All right. Bylaws. So yeah, you heard me mention that earlier this week. I sat in on the Board of Supervisors meeting in case I was called upon to say anything. I was not called upon to say anything. They obviously accepted without any discussion our updates to our bylaws, as well as the History Commission's updates. They did have a little bit more discussion on the History Commission, though. You guys are really the hot to trot folks over there. At least you guys are popular. We're not as popular, I get the impression. The big changes, added our 106, how do we notify the supervisor as well as the appropriate supervisor. The thing I want to highlight to everybody, though, is it is now codified our attendance policy. So if you have to be excused, need to be excused from a meeting, you need to let me know in advance so that I can excuse you. I pretty much easily grant excuses as they're needed. It's not really an issue to try to make sure we meet quorum, but this is something that's going to help us in the situation in which if we have members who are not attending meetings and not providing any reason for their absence, we can then seek action through their appointing board of supervisor. So just obviously when you get that email asking if you're going to attend, and if you reply back, just copy me on that one. That's enough, and I'll make sure Denise knows, and we'll document it. It's mostly just so we make sure we have enough hands on deck so we can run the meetings. All right, not seeing any comments on that one. Soapstone Connector 106 MOA. Denise, where are we at with that?
Sure. I just want to mention that that email for attendance starting in July will you will start to receive it from me rather than Janice. So I'll CC Chris so you can reply back to him and I, so we both get your response. But I think it's just easier if I get that information. So the Soapstone Connector. So staff recently reached out to FCDOT for an update on the draft MOA. They indicated that sometime, possibly in the month of May, they were going to be holding a public information meeting to present the draft MOA. I have not heard anything from them, but I will certainly keep everybody looped in as we receive information.
Okay. That's all I have. Is there any new business from any members?
I have one other update that didn't make it into the draft agenda. The courthouse masonry repairs update. So just yesterday, we received a notification from the staff at the historic courthouse that the Capitol Facilities is having a WRA, which is Whitman Rickford and Associates, survey the conditions of the existing masonry, brick and mortar at the courthouse, and then provide a report that will include elevation sketches documenting the locations of recommended repairs and repointing, typical repair details, and then third-party cost estimates. So that's a big step forward, and actually having somebody look at the repairs today rather than the 2019 report that we have. And the WRA was the consulting group that did the 2019 structural assessment.
Big kudos to the History Commission because they've been bird dogging this one pretty relentlessly. They've been advocating that someone in the same magisterial district could easily reach out to their supervisor as well from the ARB and prod them about that. I indicated that's something we could do. I can't remember which one of you falls within that zone. Obviously, also Jason frequents it a lot, so he could just,
I don't think anybody's.
Not right now. Too much Johnny Depp and Amber Heard right now.
I don't think anybody's from Providence.
I don't think so either. I think we're missing a Providence representative.
That's why I kind of thought defaulted to the lawyer.
Well, what I'll say is I'm in contact with the History Commission, and they have been prodding Jason and I to help them in their concerted efforts on this. But I think we're making headway. I think, Denise, when the report comes back, that'll be the nice thing that we can carry forward to continue to advocate for work.
One of my colleagues on the History Commission had a very fruitful meeting with Supervisor Palchak. So it's things are moving well on that front.
All right. Any other new business? John, I got to check with you. You always have something. No shakes. Okay. Seeing all head shakes and a yawn from Kay, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah.
All right, motion.
Thanks, you guys.
carries.
Have a good Memorial Day.
Don't
See you
forget the
now.
car show in June.
All right,
I
take
know. Father's Day is there, buddy. I'm there.
Good night.
Bye.
Peace. Bye-bye.